Legal, divorce and child custody, paralegal and mediator. And this week, I am with Eric.morris, a financial advisor, and we are going to give you some information about divorce, the legalities, and the financial parts of it. And so if you've watched before, you know that I'm going to start out and I'm going to talk about some legal stuff, and I'm going to have it have a bend towards the finances. So when you're divorcing, the main part of divorce is finance. So first you're going to divide the assets. And when we divide the assets, first we have to put a value on them. And I am going to draw from the expertise of others to put a value on your assets. So your financial accounts, I'm going to work with your financial advisor. And if you don't have a financial advisor, I will offer you referrals to financial advisors. Or we can just use your most recent statements if that's what you would like to do, to value your assets for the purpose, the financial accounts for the purpose of divorce. And then we're going to get the house valued if there's a house. And if you have rental properties, we're going to get those valued. And we'll get those valued either by real estate agents or by appraisals. Appraisals cost money, like usually around $800. The real estate agents who I know will do free market evaluations. So if you're going to immediately refinance the mortgage, then we would use an appraisal. Otherwise, we're going to use the market evaluations from the real estate agent or agents of you folks' choice. We're also going to value the automobiles. Kelley Blue Book is a great source. We are also going to value the household goods. Hopefully, you guys can reach an agreement on the household stuff you're going to walk away with and its value, or I can bring in a professional. If someone has a business, then there are different ways to value the business. I have a way to do it if it's a really simple business. And then I also have a business valuator who I can refer you to, and they can do either a somewhat complicated valuation or a very complicated valuation. One of my clients, the husband was part owner of a financial institution. That was a really big deal. Fortunately, the parties did not have to do a valuation of that financial institution as part of their divorce because the business was actually, there was a financial transaction involving the financial institution. And so there was already being a valuation done of it. So they just used that valuation. That saved them 20 grand. So then after the assets are valued, then we're going to create a marital assets spreadsheet and, put each person's assets in their column, if it's a solely owned asset. And then we're going to kind of see where it's at. And then we're going to factor in, the equity in the home, and if there are joint financial accounts. So we start from, what does each person want of the assets? And then we start moving puzzle pieces around. And unless you folks tell me otherwise, the goal is to share the assets 50-50. That's, the law in Minnesota. But we can accommodate what you folks' goal is as well. Then we are going to divide the debts. Any debt that was accrued during the marriage is a marital debt, and you both need to be responsible for those. And those are divided based on ability to pay. And what that means is whoever earns more pays more of the debts. And it doesn't matter who created those debts. So those are some of the financial parts. One thing I did forget to mention while we are dividing the assets, which, Eric is going to talk about more, is that if you are going to divide certain types of retirement funds, including 401s and pensions, then You need to have an extra legal document written called a quadro, or qualified domestic relations order. And I refer my clients to an employment law attorney to write that quadro, because I'm not qualified to do that. And I want to make sure you folks are set up for success. And so the quadro is something then that you are going to give along with the divorce documents that are signed by the judge. You're going to give that to your financial advisor to divide the retirement fund. So that's enough legal stuff. Now let's turn over to Eric Morris, financial advisor, and he is going to talk about the financial stuff. So, Eric, please tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us about how you help people make financial decisions during the divorce process. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me today, Christie. So, yeah, to tell a little bit about myself, I'm, as you mentioned, I'm Eric. I'm a fiduciary financial advisor and financial planner with Edward Jones. Been doing this for a little bit over a decade, and really more recently gotten to know Christie, and really have been focusing a little bit more on helping people navigate really the divorce process, because at the end of the day, it is an extremely daunting process where often one person will have held the reins previously. And it's something where, people can kind of be thrown into a very, very uncomfortable situation where, you know, kind of like, losing a loved one, where you're processing all of the emotional aspects of the situation, but also, hey, there's a lot of really nitty gritty finance stuff that you really don't have the emotional energy for. So having someone in your corner who can be a resource, hey, here's how this works, take it slow, low pressure, I think can provide a lot of value. So for today, I'll really just be taking a little bit of time to talk about all of the different types of investment accounts. I mean, I love Christie already talked about the Quadro, which is a huge part of it. How do we actually split those accounts while avoiding all of the normal withdrawal penalties and all that kind of stuff? So I'll talk a little bit more about that. So a couple types of accounts that you're probably familiar with. Number one is going to be a Roth IRA. So that's a type of retirement account where you've already paid income tax on it, but the advantage is that everything after that, it grows tax-free for the rest of your life. And then when you withdraw in retirement, that is also tax-free. So that's generally speaking, I would say the most valuable type of account. Each dollar is the most valuable in there. But there are a number of other types. A traditional IRA is basically going to be the opposite. You did not pay income tax on those dollars when you first earned them and put them in there. You get a tax break on the front end, but on the back end, you are taxed as ordinary income on anything you withdraw. The nice thing is the Quadro Christie mentioned does allow you to skip that. You do not get penalized for actually splitting and withdrawing from the account. Let's say if you are the spouse who is getting the assets from your former spouse's IRA, you would open a new IRA, you can directly deposit it in there, and the Quadro allows you to skip all of those normal penalties you would have for withdrawing, even if you're under the age that you can normally withdraw. 401ks, those are basically going to behave the same as IRAs and Roths up above. So what that means is within your 401k, you probably have, most people usually do traditional IRA. So it's going to behave the same as the normal traditional IRA assets where you're taxed afterwards. But a lot of the time, a Roth is also allowed in your 401k. So you might have one or the other or both, but generally speaking, that'll behave the same as just a normal Roth or IRA. And then finally, for investment accounts, you have really non-retirement accounts. So let's say you just have like a regular old savings account at your bank, or like a joint account over at an investment firm. Those assets, income tax has already been paid on them, but because they're not retirement accounts, you can actually get double taxed on them. So for those accounts, any interest, dividends, trades, sales, anything like that, generally speaking, you get double taxed on that. But those can be split also as well through the Quadro. And then finally, this isn't strictly speaking an investment asset, but the house. If you do own a house, it is a huge point of consideration. It often has sentimental value, the practical aspects of, hey, I really like living in this part of town. And these days, one very tricky thing is the mortgage. Oftentimes, a divorce will force a refinance of the mortgage. And let's say, for example, if you bought 5 years ago, your mortgage might be 3%, which is awesome. But rates aren't 3% right now. A new mortgage taken out right now is probably going to be between 6 and 7%. So when you're talking to straight up a mortgage payment, that can close to double the payment. So not to, scare anybody or anything like that, but it is a major point of consideration. It can be a significantly increased cost for splitting the house. So when you're kind of going through those negotiation processes with Christie, also work with Christie if at all possible. Lawyers are very, very, very expensive. As you're going through those negotiations, just kind of think about, hey, do I want liquidity? The house is very important to me, but I can't tap into those assets. I'm locking those away until I sell. Or, hey, I might need assets pretty soon. Let's maybe try some other types of accounts. Thinking about how your tax situation works out, and just how do you value those different types of accounts when you're going through the negotiation process. So yeah, but I would say that was a very broad overview. I know everybody's situation is different, so I'm always more than happy to sit down and talk about your specific situation. But overall, hopefully that's some helpful info.
Awesome. And one word that you said, I am guessing that some people might not know what it means. What
Mhm.
does a fiduciary mean?
Thank you. I always throw that word around and then never actually explain it. So a fiduciary is someone who is legally obligated to work in your best interest. So some advisors are fiduciaries, some are not. But let's say, for example, when you hire an attorney to represent you, you are paying them to act in your best interest and represent you. If they're in that capacity, you shouldn't have to worry about them. Hey, what if they're recommending this because they get a big old commission out of it? So when somebody is bound in a fiduciary capacity, they have to make recommendations that are in your best interest.
Absolutely. I just wanted to make sure that people understand what that big word means.
Mhm.
Um, and it doesn't discourage them from reaching out because, um, my very first law class that I took a long time ago, I'm not going to tell you when because it'll let you know how old I am. In undergraduate, one of the first things that they taught us is don't use the big legal words to your clients because they're going to think either that you are trying to, you know, talk over them and be like, you're so much better than they are, or that you're trying to trick them. And
Mhm.
so, like, I really took that to heart, when I was 18 years old, learning that. And yeah. And, let me tell you, folks, having a financial advisor, especially during a life transition, is so important. Um, I'm not divorced, but I was widowed in 2009, and I was right on getting a financial advisor because I had received a life insurance death benefit, and I wanted to make sure that I was using that in the best way to help my kids and I um, be okay. And I know nothing, and that's okay because there are people like Eric who know things, a lot of things. And something else that Eric said. Made me think of the fact that a lot of times when people start to work with him are when someone passes. And really, a divorce is the death of a relationship. Nobody gets married well, okay, maybe a tiny percentage of people get married thinking, I'm not really sure about this person. Like, I might get divorced. So, the vast majority of people go into it thinking it's going to be forever. And then when it doesn't last forever, it is emotionally crushing. It is emotionally crushing. And it is just as if, you know, that person had died because the relationship with that person is never going to be the same. And maybe it will completely end if you folks don't have kids together. But if you have kids together, then it's going to be completely different, and it has to become like basically a business relationship. And the business is raising those kids or child, as best as possible. making decisions that are in the best interest of the children. And I'm going to see if there are any questions. I've been looking. I'm going to double check, see if there are any questions for Eric about what he has said so far. And there are not. And so then, Eric, so my next question is, after people have navigated the divorce process, and maybe they have some funds, some retirement funds that they're gonna, transfer into their own name.
Mhm.
And also they just need to replan their financial future as a single person. So tell us about that. Thanks.
Absolutely. So the quadro you mentioned is going to really be the start of that process. So that is, as you said, Christy, you hand that to the advisor where the accounts are currently held, and then that will allow splitting off a portion of those accounts. Those will be moved into a new account in your name or the spouse's name, depending on the situation. And then from there, those can basically be moved wherever you'd like. So if you want to keep it where they currently are, totally no problem. You can just leave it as is. Otherwise, if, hey, I have a relationship elsewhere or I want to work with someone else, you can do what's called an account transfer, which is basically where you just tell that firm, hey, I want to move all my assets from this firm to this firm, move it all like to like. You don't sell anything or have to cash it out. You just move it all as is from one place to the other. And after that, once all of the process, once all the divorce process has been completed, you're out on the back end, really just taking a breath to, it really, as Christy said, it is the death of a relationship, and you're kind of finding your way on the other side. So a lot of things have changed. Your tax bracket also is going to be, single again as opposed to married. So just a lot of different numbers that are not exactly clear cut. So just sitting down and really putting together a plan. So oftentimes what I'll do with people is, hey, these are the assets we came out on the other side of the divorce with once all the fees and everything are paid. And really just sitting down and taking another look at goals. Maybe those goals have changed dramatically as a result of this whole process. And really just helping find out, where am I right now? What assets do I have to work with? Job, the retirement account split, house equity, that kind of thing. And then what do I want to do in the future? And just finding, what are my goals? How much do I think they're going to cost? Ballpark, when do I want to retire? And then just building a path to get there. That's what I really, when I sit down with people on the tail end of this process, that's really what I focus on doing. If I can give them a little bit of certainty on, hey, my path has completely changed, but now I know what it is going forward, I think there's a lot of value for that. And also, Christy, one thing I love that you were saying is a lot of people hide behind jargon. A lot of advisors you'll sit down with will often use a lot of jargon in order to really sound smart, because it is kind of a thing used in sales sometimes. So I think it's super important to sit down and find someone who does not do that, somebody who explains things in clear language where when you leave a meeting, you feel more confident than before you went in, not less. I just cannot emphasize how important that is. It needs to be somebody who empowers you, educates you, and leaves you stronger on the back end after every time you talk. I think that's just the most important thing in the world. So yeah, that's kind of my process there. And I'll just a little couple notes for people, but again, everybody's situation is different. So I'm always happy to sit down and just talk about your specific situation as well.
Absolutely. Every situation is different. And folks, that is exactly why you need a financial advisor. Because there are things that you and I do not know. I actually met with my financial advisor this morning, because she found something that is better for my financial goals, for my daughter and myself. And so she was like explaining it to me, and honestly, I didn't understand half of what she said. And so it's good that I trust her. She's like one of my best friends. And but she just brought it up to me a couple weeks ago, like, hey, I found this thing that would be better for you than, you know, the thing that you have now. Um and I wouldn't know to, do any of that. And that is why you need a financial advisor, because they are going to help you make the most of the money that you have from the divorce. And they are also going to help you stay out of debt. So at a long time ago now, like 17 years ago or something like that, 16 years ago, I worked in bankruptcy law for a bit. And the top three causes of bankruptcy are unemployment, disability, and divorce. Because people still are spending the same way after the divorce that they were spending during the divorce. And just it's not clicking with them that they don't have access to as much money. And sometimes it's a dramatically smaller amount of money they have access to. And part of how the Minnesota court system tries to prevent these bankruptcies or just, financial shortcomings is part of the divorce process is you talk about, how you guys are spending money now, and then you talk about how you guys are going to spend money after the divorce case. What's the mortgage or rent going to be and all the bills. And so you can add that up and then see, holy crap, after this divorce case, I'm going to have X number of dollars of bills per month if I continue to spend that way. Oh, let's compare that to my take home income. Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm going to be like negative $500 every month. All right. So then your financial advisor can help you trim $500 from your budget, and so that you're not in the red every month and taking money out of your investment account or however you're gonna make up for that shortfall. Um, or, you could do all the work that the court wants you to do and then find out, oh, great, I'm $1,000 plus a month. And then you can talk to your financial advisor and be like, I'm going to be $1,000 plus a month. Let's figure out what I want to do with that money. Maybe you're going to put, some of it in an investment account and just all sorts of different stuff. I'm not a financial advisor, so I don't know. And so I am not seeing any questions anywhere. But Eric, could you tell us a little bit about how you help people budget after a divorce case?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. It's something that can be super, super valuable in some cases. Some people just don't really need it. But a lot of the time it's, hey, I've been, just as you said, used to spending at this level, and that's just not practical anymore. Have to kind of recalibrate things. So when I'm helping people with that process, usually what I found is most helpful for people is not to jump in and look at every single credit card statement, every single transaction, just because at the end of the day, at that point, it can be very, very intimidating and time consuming because nobody likes budgeting. Let's be real. But if you can take a little bit more of a high level approach and really just talk about cash flow, that's how I kind of like to look at it. Where let's say if we just get down on paper every month, ballpark, what is my take home income? And then how much am I actually sending out the door? How much is my mortgage payment? How much do I spend on gas, car repairs, all these different categories. And if you can do kind of an estimate for each month for each of those categories, I can help find out, what are my fixed expenses? What are my kind of semi-variable? And then how much do I want to dedicate toward variable stuff? Hey, gifts, vacations, all these kind of more discretionary things. And then we can help prioritize. Hey, let's say I've got, X number of dollars coming in every month, and I've got, maybe 5,000 coming in every month, and I have 4,000 of fixed expenses. Okay, now I know how much I can actually dedicate to the more discretionary, the fun spending, right? And then maybe put some toward savings each month. So just really, I think I've found that to be the most helpful for people because it's not quite as intimidating. You're not really digging through all these credit card statements, nitpicking everything. But if you can get yourself to a sustainable level of, hey, I've got more coming in than going out the door, that's the most important thing. And just having the discipline to stick to it. Another tactic that I've had a lot of success with is, people who often maybe have a little bit of a spending issue where if the money's in the account, oftentimes it'll leave the account. To set aside a specific fund money account, set all the boring stuff, mortgage, food, all that kind of stuff on auto pay coming out of your main account. But then anything extra, going out to eat, going out and going out to the movies or travel or the fun stuff. Set yourself a limit. Maybe based off that cash flow worksheet, I can put $300 a month toward fun stuff. Set aside a new account that's for fun money spending, put $300 a month in there, and that's it. Once that runs out, well, I gotta wait for next month. So you're kind of putting a hard limit on those things instead of just putting everything on a credit card. Because at that point, it's really, really easy to overspend. But if you put yourself on a hard limit, that can often be a really, really good way to, oh, hey, you kind of get in that mental calibration of, well, I've got this much to spend each money on fun stuff. I'm going to think more about that before swiping the card. So those are some of the things I've had the most success with, I'd say.
Awesome. I know that's going to be a great help to a lot of people. And again, most people are not great at budgeting, like Eric said. And so that's why I'm going to encourage you to get a financial advisor during the divorce process, or at least after the divorce. And, Eric is a great financial advisor. If he is not the financial advisor for you for some reason or another, I can refer you to financial advisors who you feel might be a better fit for you. But Eric is awesome. And I have talked to him about finances as well as my own advisor. And so there are no questions in the chat or anywhere that people might send questions. So that is it for today. And we both want to, I give a 30-minute free consultation to everyone. And Eric, please tell people about how you first interact with people.
Absolutely. So I would say I take the same approach that you do. I'll always offer a free consultation for anybody I meet with. I'm not going to send you a bill for getting together. And hopefully, if I can provide you a couple good pieces of information and just sit down, learn more about your specific situation. Because really, at the end of the day, if I'm going to give good advice, I need to know everything that's going on. So it really just involves asking a lot of questions. That are more specific. Hey, what do you have going on? What's your current situation? And the most important question is, what's important to you? At the end of the day, everything else is going to revolve around that. For some people, hey, I want to retire early. I want to live it up a little bit. I want to provide for my family. I want to do charitable stuff. That's the most important question. So finding out that answer, and then everything else revolves around that. So I'd say that really takes the form of a half-hour consultation as well. Always happy to do that with anyone. And then we can see, hey, is there, is this potentially a good fit for going forward? And then we can always kind of, go from there.
Awesome. And both of our contact information will be in the Facebook Live event information shortly. So reach out to us using that information. And I hope that this was beneficial and that we are both able to help you in the future. This is Christie Thompson with ChristieLegal, and Eric, thank you for joining me today. And I hope that everyone in Minnesota has a great rest of this beautiful late spring day.